Mail order bride lost at the wrong station until a little girl called her mama. She thought she got off at the wrong station, a dusty place where trains rarely stopped and dreams went to die. But fate had other plans. A little girl's voice called out, "Mama," and in that single word, the past and future changed. He was a cowboy, with eyes like winter storms, guarding a heart that had forgotten how to hope until she stepped into his world. Through nights of firelight and whispers, they built a home out of dust and faith. When pride and greed came to tear them apart, love stood taller than fear. And on a snowy Christmas night under the bells of Dust Creek, they found what every soul searches for, not the right train, but the right home. Evening burned crimson across the Dust Creek desert. The train whistle wailed long and low, tearing through the stillness of the Wild West. Dust swirled into the dying light iron wheels, screeching against the rails. As the train began to pull away from the station, a small woman stepped down her long dress, catching the sand, an old leather suitcase heavy in her hand. Elena Moore, a schoolteacher from the faraway east, stood there amid the wind and fading sunlight. In her hand were a crumpled ticket, a marriage proposal from a man she had never met, and a fragile hope that someone might be waiting for her at the end of the line. But as the train rolled into the distance, only the desert wind remained whispering through the crooked sign that read, "Dust Creek," and rattling the metal flags above. No one came. No one called her name, only silence stretching endlessly. She looked around. A small town nestled in the hollow of the sand valley, crooked wooden houses, a sleeping saloon, a few figures leading horses across the dusty road. No one paid attention to the strange woman standing alone at the station. The desert wind lashed her face, carrying the dry taste of heat and salt. Elena pulled a letter from her coat and read again the shaky line of ink, "Come to Dust Creek. I'll be waiting at the station. Samuel Carter. Samuel Carter." The name was now only an echo falling into emptiness. A distant gunshot cracked from the hills, making her flinch. Her heart pounded. She suddenly understood this place was unlike any she had ever known, and maybe she truly was lost. Then from behind her, a small voice called out. Mama Elena turned. A little girl of about 7 stood a few steps away, eyes blue and glistening hair tangled by the wind. The child stared at her, trembling, and called again. "Mama, I knew you'd come." The world seemed to stop. Elena froze, breath caught in her throat. She wanted to speak, but no words came. In that instant, every sound of Dust Creek faded, leaving only the pounding of her own heart. A wooden door creaked open. From the house at the end of the road, a tall man stepped out, dark leather coat, old cowboy hat, shadowing half his face. In the last rays of sunset, his silhouette stretched long across the sand. He walked slowly, each step carrying the weight of this lonely land. He stopped beside the little girl, resting a hand on her shoulder. His voice was deep and rough, tinged with wind and tobacco smoke. "She's not your Mama Lucy." The girl lowered her head, her small hand clutching the hem of Elena's dress. The man looked at the stranger, his eyes not cold, but tired, like someone who had carried loss too long. Then he spoke softly, voice low and steady, almost like a prophecy. "But maybe she's what we all need." The wind rose again, lifting the strands of Elena's golden hair. Far off, the sun slipped behind the hills, leaving a red scar across the sky. And that single line, simple yet cutting deep, opened the door to destiny, a journey where a lost woman and a lonely man would learn again how to love, how to trust, and how to find their way home. Part 1. The Lost Woman. Dusk settled slowly over the plains of Dust Creek. The setting sun painted the cracked hills in a deep red glow, stretching the shadows of the Carter Ranch into long, wavering streaks that danced in the wind. The old wooden house stood still amid the endless land, a thin wisp of smoke curling from its chimney into the indigo sky. Outside, the chirping of crickets blended with the creak of a loose door, hinge a melancholy symphony without an end. Elena stepped onto the porch, her boots heavy with desert dust, the weight of her worn leather suitcase dragging on her arm. Jack Carter stood by the steps, silent, but nodding slightly, a wordless invitation. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of smoked coffee and old saddle leather scents that felt both strange and familiar, as if belonging to another life. Lucy ran up behind her father, laughing brightly. "Papa, I told you God heard my prayer. He sent Mama back to us." Elena knelt, her voice soft as a desert breeze. "Where is your mother, Lucy?" The little girl looked up, eyes deep and blue. "She sleeps with the stars now, but I know she sent someone to keep you and me warm." Jack cleared his throat quietly and turned away, pointing toward the table. "You should sit. Night comes quick in the desert and the wind bites." Dinner was simple: cornbread, dried meat, and a pot of warm water. Elena sat across from father and daughter, feeling the hollow weight of displacement settle in her chest. Through the window, the endless plain shimmered faintly under the fading sun. A few pale horses grazed in the distance, the land stretching out as far as the eye could see. Lucy spoke non-stop. She told stories about her mother, how she'd let her hair loose in the wind, how she'd sing lullabies every night before bed. Her voice was light and clear, tinged with pride and longing. Each word felt like a tiny needle stitching into Elena's heart. She listened quietly, smiling faintly, her eyes glimmering with a sorrow she couldn't name. Jack remained silent. He cut his bread with slow, deliberate motions. His sun-worn hands trembled slightly whenever Lucy mentioned her mother. The wind outside howled through the eaves, making the oil lamp flicker, casting trembling shadows across his weathered face, strong, stoic, but weary. When dinner ended, Elena rose and walked to the window. The sky had deepened into night. She looked out at the horizon, then softly began to sing. "O Shenandoah, I long to see you away, you rolling river." Her voice was clear, tender, and heartbreakingly sweet. The room fell silent. Lucy looked up, her eyes glistening. Jack, halfway through cutting the last piece of meat, froze. The knife hung mid-air. He didn't look at her, but his hand tightened, the knuckles pale. The melody filled the room, echoing through the empty space, stirring something long buried in him. The ache of memory, the quiet longing of a man who'd forgotten how to feel. In the reflection of the lamp flame, his eyes glimmered faintly, the first spark of life after years of darkness. When the song ended, Elena turned, meeting his gaze. Neither spoke. Silence hung between them, heavy, fragile, yet more honest than words could ever be. Jack stood gathering the dishes. His voice was low, almost hoarse. "You can stay in the spare room. The window faces the field." Elena nodded, thanked him softly, then bent to kiss Lucy goodnight. The child smiled, clutching the pink ribbon Elena had tied into her hair. When night fully settled, the wind returned, whistling through the roof beams. Elena sat by the table, opening her suitcase. She pulled out the crumpled letter, the one that had brought her here. The paper was frayed, the ink smudged, but the words still clear. "Come to me. I'll meet you at Dust Creek Station. We'll start again." She whispered the line over and over, as if the repetition could make it true. Samuel Carter, the name of the man who had written it. Did he ever exist? Or was he just a cruel invention of fate? A sudden gust of wind burst through the unlatched window. The letter lifted, spinning through the air like a wounded bird, and slipped out into the darkness. Elena gasped, chasing after it, but it was gone, swallowed by the endless black of the plains. She stood there, breath-trembling hair wild from the wind. The night sky loomed above, vast, cold, and indifferent. Somewhere a dog barked, an owl cried. From far away, a faint glow flickered from the barn. In that moment, Elena understood she was truly lost. Not just in direction, but in faith. She sat down, arms wrapped around herself, tears falling quietly to the rhythm of the wind outside. That night, Jack didn't sleep either. From the next room, he could hear her soft sobs, the sound of a wandering soul breaking open. He stepped onto the porch, lit a cigarette, and stared at the stars. She's lost everything, he thought, just like I did. The red ember of his cigarette glowed faintly, reflecting in his deep gray eyes. He drew in a long breath, then exhaled into the wind, the smoke disappearing into the vastness. Inside the old wooden house, the lost woman wept. Outside, the widowed cowboy watched the stars, two lonely souls divided by a single wall, listening to the same heartbeat, slow, heavy, and aching for love once more. And somewhere out there on the Dust Creek Plain, God smiled softly for some times to make two souls find each other. He first has to let them lose their way. Part 2. The Field of Hope. Morning came softer than usual over Dust Creek. The sun rose slowly behind the distant hills, spreading a honey-warm light across the plains. Dewdrops lingered on the sage leaves, shimmering faintly and mirroring the sky above. From afar came the crow of roosters, the whinny of horses, and the crackle of fire in the kitchen, the sounds of a peaceful morning in a land that had long forgotten peace. Elena opened the door and stepped out onto the porch, inhaling deeply. The wind carried the scent of dry grass and burning wood, raw and earthy, uniquely Western. She smiled faintly. She hadn't slept much the night before, yet somehow she felt lighter. Maybe it was Lucy's laughter echoing from the kitchen, or maybe it was the quiet look in Jack's eyes when he poured her a cup of coffee before heading out to the fields. From a distance came the rhythmic thud of a saw. Elena followed the sound, her dress brushing through the dust. Behind the old horse stable, Jack was repairing a broken fence. She paused, surveying the place, rotten boards, coiled ropes, scraps of timber that still might be useful. A sudden idea sparked in her mind. "Jack," she called softly. He turned, hammer still in hand. "Use this," he asked, squinting. "For what?" "For a school," she said firmly. "For Lucy. And for the other children around here." Jack was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, his deep voice steady and warm. "If you think it's worth doing, go ahead. This land hasn't heard the sound of learning in a long while." In the days that followed, Elena worked tirelessly. She tied her hair back, rolled up her sleeves, and used every old plank she could find to build something new, the first classroom Dust Creek had ever seen. Lucy was her most eager helper. The little girl carried water-cleared stones, wiped tables, and hung a wooden sign over the door that read, in chalk, "Dust Creek School where we learn to dream." Word spread faster than the wind. Within days, children from nearby ranches began to wander in one, bringing a potato, another clutching a kitten, some too shy to step inside. Most had never held a pencil, never seen a schoolroom, yet their eyes shone with curiosity. Elena stood before them in the small room, the scent of wood hay and chalk filling the air. She wrote the first letter on the board, A for apple and for light. The children repeated after her haltingly at first, but their voices soon found rhythm. Lucy sat in the front row, her eyes bright as twin flames. Each time she read a word correctly, Elena's smile widened, a quiet joy she hadn't felt in years. Outside, Jack Carter reined in his horse beside the fence. Leaning on the rail, he peered through the cracks of the stable. Children's laughter spilled into the air, mingling with Elena's clear musical voice like birdsong drifting across the plains. He couldn't remember the last time he had heard laughter at the ranch. Perhaps not since Emma, his wife, had gone. The breeze caught Elena's golden hair, lifting it gently as she moved about the room. She bent down to guide a child's hand, her touch tender, her smile patient. Watching her, Jack felt something tighten in his chest. Without realizing it, he smiled the first real smile in 3 long years. When class ended, the children ran out into the fields, their laughter ringing like a stream. Lucy stayed behind, scribbling something on the board. Elena walked over, her tone gentle. "What are you writing, Lucy? I want to write home, but I don't know how." Elena knelt beside her, taking her small hand. "Home in English is Home. Home." She wrote it slowly, gracefully. Lucy copied her letters, shaky but determined. When she finished, she jumped up, shouting, "Home, I did it." Elena stared at the word, 4 white letters on the dark board, and tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She gathered Lucy into her arms, her voice trembling. "Good job, Lucy. You know, sometimes home isn't where we're born, it's where we're loved." Lucy looked up, eyes glistening. "Then this is my home, and yours too, right?" Elena nodded, unable to speak. Tears mingled with her smile, the first true smile of belonging. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Jack passed by the small classroom. He stopped at the doorway, watching Elena gather notebooks, while Lucy dozed off at her desk. The golden light streamed through the window, falling softly across her shoulders. Jack lingered there, unmoving. Something inside him shifted, something long buried began to stir again. Maybe it was faith. Maybe hope. Elena looked up and met his eyes. They didn't speak, but shared a faint, knowing smile. In that smile, Jack saw spring returning to a heart that had known only winter. Outside, the Dust Creek Plain blazed gold beneath the setting sun, living up to its new name, the Field of Hope. And for the first time in many lonely years, two lost souls began to believe again in tomorrow. Part 3. The Rumor and the Forged Letter. Noon in Dust Creek was heavy and stifling. The sun blazed down on the old wooden rooftops, the wind carried the dry scent of sand and whiskey, and heat shimmered over the main road. The Red Coyote Saloon sat at the corner, the place where the men of town gathered after work to talk, to laugh, or to drink away the loneliness of the West. The door swung open, and silence rippled through the room. A stranger had entered. A refined lady in a wine-colored silk dress, pearls at her throat, her proud face half hidden beneath a lace parasol. Her polished shoes clicked sharply on the wooden floor. With just one glance, she silenced the entire saloon. "Who's that?" someone whispered. "Heard she's from Santa Fe," another replied quietly. "Name's Mrs. Hargrove, old friend of the Thorntons. Filthy rich, and looks like she's got business with the Carters." The moment the name Carter was uttered, the air in the saloon seemed to thicken. By afternoon, the whole town was buzzing. Rumors spread faster than wildfire across dry grass. They said that Elena Moore, the schoolteacher, wasn't a lost bride at all, but an imposter. That she had forged a marriage letter to claim the Carter ranch land that many wealthy men from Santa Fe had long coveted. The gossip reached the marketplace. When Elena walked through with a basket of cornbread Lucy had sent her to fetch, every eye turned toward her. Some people lowered their gaze. Others stared openly, full of disdain. There she is. They say she faked a letter forged Samuel Carter's name. Eastern women always scheming. Elena froze. Every whisper was a blade cutting into her chest. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened. Then someone threw a crumpled paper at her feet. She bent down. It was the letter, the one she had carried for months. But the handwriting, the ink, it wasn't Samuel Carter's. "Look at this." Mrs. Hargrove's voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. She stepped into the center of the square face, calm as if delivering a sermon. "Here's your proof. A forged letter. Miss Elena Moore fabricated the whole story, wrote it herself, came here pretending to be a bride, and bewitched Mr. Carter to take his land. A sin like this Dust Creek has never seen." The market went silent. Elena went pale. "No, that's not true," she whispered. "The letter was in my suitcase." Mrs. Hargrove interrupted, her lips curling with cruelty. "Oh, and yet it's here in my hands. You hide your lies well." Murmurs rose again. A man spat on the ground. Eastern women all lies. Lies and pretty faces. Poor Carter. Elena felt the ground tilt beneath her. The wind whipped her hair, filling her mouth with dust. She couldn't see who was speaking, only the dozens of accusing eyes filled with contempt, suspicion, and betrayal. Then a clear, trembling voice rang out. Miss Elena Lucy came running, her dress catching dirt, eyes wet with tears. She threw her arms around Elena's waist, clinging tight as if afraid someone might pull her away. "Don't listen to them, Miss Elena. I believe you. You're good. You're home." Elena knelt, holding the little girl close. Tears spilled freely, falling onto Lucy's hair. The crowd fell silent. No one had expected a child to speak the truth so purely amid so much poison. Mrs. Hargrove arched a brow, her voice like polished steel touching. "But the faith of a child doesn't replace the truth, Miss Moore." Elena lifted her head. Her eyes burned with fury. "Then perhaps you've forgotten what truth feels like, because it's never written by those who invent it." A tall figure appeared at the far end of the street. The sunlight struck his dark coat, glinting on the dust of his boots. Jack Carter. He walked through the crowd, slow and steady, his gray eyes storm dark. Enough, he said quietly, but his voice carried like thunder. The marketplace went still. Mrs. Hargrove's smile was thin. "Mr. Carter, I'm merely speaking what everyone here already thinks. No one wants to see a woman like her stain the honor of Emma Carter's name." Jack's gaze locked on hers, then swept across the crowd. "Honor," he repeated slowly. "Honor doesn't live in rumors. It lives in deeds and kindness, in the way a person makes the world gentler." He stepped forward, placing a hand firmly on Elena's shoulder, a silent vow of protection. "This woman built a school for your children. She taught them letters, taught them dreams. And you," his voice rose steel, "beneath the calm you burn hope with the fire of your suspicion." A hush fell over the square. Jack's tone softened, but his words struck deep. Who here hasn't lost their way? Yet she's the one helping Dust Creek find its own again. The wind rose, suddenly catching the forged letter in Mrs. Hargrove's hand. It lifted, twisted through the air, and dropped into a muddy puddle at Elena's feet. The ink bled and disappeared, the falsehood dissolving into the dirt. A woman from the crowd set down her basket and spoke softly. "My boy goes to Miss Elena's school. He can write his own name now? Maybe we've been wrong." Murmurs spread, rippling like a thaw. Mrs. Hargrove's face blanched. She gripped her parasol tight, but her composure cracked. Jack leaned close to Elena, his voice low, steady, and certain. "Don't be afraid. In this place, I'll be the first to believe in you, and the last to stop." Elena looked up at him through tears and smiled. And right there, in that dusty square among shifting gazes and breaking silence, something in Dust Creek came alive again. Faith. Part 4. The First Storm. That night, the sky over Dust Creek hung low and heavy, as if it might collapse at any moment. The air carried the damp, acrid scent of desert wind before it turned wild. Clouds twisted overhead, rumbling like the drums of a restless earth. In the distance, lightning split the darkness, casting brief flashes across the pale fields of grass. Jack stood on the porch, eyes fixed on the horizon. He'd lived his whole life on this land long enough to know when a real storm was coming. "This isn't good," he muttered. "The horses are still out." From the kitchen, Elena appeared, a lantern trembling in her hand. The light flickered across her face, tracing the worry there. "What did you say?" "A storm. A sandstorm. A big one. I have to go." Alone, Jack glanced at her, hesitating at the quiet steel in her gaze. "Stay here. Lock the doors. I won't be long." But Elena didn't move. She set the lantern down on the table, pulled on her cloak, and stepped toward him. "You're not going out there alone." He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. One look at her determined face, and he simply nodded. The wind howled as they reached the pasture. Dust rose like smoke, stinging their eyes, slashing their faces. Every step was a battle. The world was black except when lightning flickered, quick, violent, and blinding. The herd had gone wild, circling and crashing against the fence. Jack wrapped a scarf around his mouth, shouting above the wind, "Get them inside. Hurry." Elena plunged into the chaos, her skirt whipping in tatters. She tugged at ropes, guided a young mare toward the stable, her hands shaking but steady. Sand burned her eyes, yet she kept going. From the other side, Jack's voice cut through the roar, calling, signaling. Two small figures fighting a storm that could swallow them whole. A flash, then a deafening crack as a wooden beam splintered. The roof of the old stable gave a tortured groan. From the house came Lucy's scream. "Lucy!" Elena cried, breaking into a run. Jack saw her go, his heart seized. He abandoned the horses and sprinted after her. The wind struck them like a wall, forcing them low. The lantern flame sputtered, then died. They burst through the door just as the porch roof began to collapse. Lucy huddled beneath the table, eyes wide with terror. Jack lunged forward, sweeping her into his arms, shielding her with his body. Elena threw a blanket over them and pulled them toward the corner by the stove. A loud crash. Water and sand poured through the broken roof. The fire in the hearth hissed and died, plunging the house into a suffocating dark. Elena fumbled through drawers, hands trembling, until she found a box of matches. A single candle flickered to life, small, fragile, but enough to bring faces back from the shadows. Lucy shivered in Jack's arms. He held her tighter eyes meeting Elena's in the trembling glow. "She's safe," Elena whispered. She knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Their eyes locked for a heartbeat, two exhausted souls surrounded by the fury of the storm. His face was streaked with dust hair, wet and tangled, but his gaze had softened, gentled by something wordless. Lucy soon drifted into sleep. Elena pulled the blanket higher and sat beside Jack, their backs against the cold wooden wall. The silence between them felt warm, almost sacred, filled only by the wind's hollow cries. "Maybe this storm," she murmured, staring at the candle, "is what Dust Creek needs. Rain to make the land live again." Jack let out a low, rough laugh. "You always see the good in everything, even hell." "If we don't," she said quietly, "we die before the storm's even over." He didn't reply, just looked at her. In the flickering light, her face glowed softly, brown eyes, warm and alive, hair tousled by the wind, lips cracked, but still curved in a gentle smile. For the first time in years, his heart felt something stir, a pulse long thought gone. Thunder rolled overhead. Lightning flared, illuminating the room, and in that brief white light, their eyes caught each other's two small flames trembling toward the same warmth. Jack reached out slowly, his calloused hand brushing her cheek. Elena gasped but didn't pull away. His palm was rough-hot against her skin. Her heartbeat quickened, mingling with his ragged breath. Outside, the wind howled, but inside there was only them. His voice was low, shaking each word carved from the ache of years. "For 3 years I thought my heart was dead, but you made it beat again." Tears welled in Elena's eyes, not from fear, but from something deeper, something reborn. She placed her hand over his, holding it against her face. For a moment, time stopped. The storm still raged beyond the walls, but inside that fragile house, there was only breath, warmth, and two forgotten hearts finding each other in the chaos of the world. Lightning flared, then faded. The wind quieted. The rain thinned. From within the leaking roof, a faint glow of warmth spread outward, the calm after the storm. The land outside was scarred and wet, but alive again. And within Jack and Elena, something else had come to life, something pure, fierce, and unbreakable. That night, the first storm of Dust Creek didn't just cleanse the land. It awakened something far holier, the hearts of two lost souls. Part 5. The Trial by Fire. After the storm, Dust Creek awoke like a weary body struggling to breathe again. Roofs sagged, fences lay broken, and the few patches of green were buried beneath dunes of sand. The air was thick with the smell of mud and smoke. Across town, people gathered at the church, the only building left standing to share shelter, food, and water. Elena and Lucy handed out bowls of porridge to the elderly, while Jack worked silently to rebuild the roof. His face was darker, lined with exhaustion, but his eyes burned brighter than before. The storm had passed, but inside them something new had taken root, small, fragile, and warm enough to keep them standing amid the ruins. When the church bell rang, the townsfolk gathered in the main hall. Everyone thought the meeting was to discuss repairs. But then the doors swung open, and Mrs. Hargrove entered dressed in silk and pearls as if the storm had politely spared her. Behind her walked a gray-haired man in a black suit, a sleek leather briefcase in hand. Their footsteps echoed coldly against the warped floorboards. Jack narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing here, Hargrove?" She smiled sharp as a blade. "I came to help, of course. The storm didn't just destroy homes. It damaged Dust Creek's reputation. And reputation, Mr. Carter, starts with you." Whispers rippled through the room. Elena drew Lucy closer, her spine stiffening with unease. The lawyer opened his case and pulled out a neat stack of papers. "This is a contract to transfer ownership of Carter Ranch to the Hargrove Corporation. In return, Mrs. Hargrove will pay all taxes, fund the rebuilding, and guarantee employment for the townsfolk." Jack's jaw clenched. "You want to buy my land?" Mrs. Hargrove tilted her head, voice sweet but venomous. "I want to save Dust Creek from disgrace. Everyone's heard about you and Miss Elena, such an inappropriate relationship. The town needs a reason to believe its name is still clean. Sign this, leave quietly, and it will all be forgotten." The hall froze. Even the wind outside seemed to hush. Jack looked down at the papers, his expression unreadable. Elena's hand tightened around Lucy's. Mrs. Hargrove went on, her tone steady, almost pious. Sometimes one must sacrifice a bit of personal honor to preserve the dignity of the whole. That woman, she flicked her eyes at Elena, will never belong here. A faint clang echoed. The tin cup in Elena's trembling hand had dropped to the floor. All eyes turned. She stepped forward into the center of the room. The dim yellow light of the hanging lamp revealed her face streaked with dirt, glistening with tears but unbowed. Her voice shook, but every word was clear. I'd rather live poor with truth than rich with lies. Mrs. Hargrove arched an eyebrow. Do you think your pretty words can save him? Elena shook her head, tears breaking but her voice steady. I don't need to save anyone. I just don't want to watch people lose themselves out of fear of what others think. The words struck deep, flickering through the silence like a spark in dry grass. Jack stared at her lips pressed tight. Then suddenly he stepped forward. Without a word, he snatched the contract from the lawyer's hands. The entire room held its breath. A sharp, tearing sound cut through the air. Reap! The noise echoed like a gunshot in the quiet hall. Shredded papers fluttered through the air, twisting slowly to the floor. Jack lifted his head, eyes blazing. Honor isn't written on paper. He said, each word heavy and sure. It's in how we treat the ones we love. No one dared speak. Mrs. Hargrove froze, her pride melting into shock. Elena stepped closer, her hand trembling as she took Jack's. He squeezed back, firm, steady, and full of quiet fire. Their eyes met, and in that look was something stronger than defiance, faith. Then Lucy ran up, clutching both their hands, voice ringing clear through the crowd. If this is a sin, then Dust Creek needs more sins like it. A few chuckles broke out, small, uncertain. Then came applause. First, scattered, then louder until the entire hall was clapping, rough hands pounding together in rhythm, a chorus of release. Mrs. Hargrove looked around, realizing the faces before her were no longer fearful but resolute. Her mouth thinned. She grabbed her purse and turned sharply, her heels striking the floor like gunfire as she stormed out. When the doors closed behind her, the wind swept in, warm, fresh, alive. Someone threw another log into the stove. The fire roared, filling the church with a golden light. Jack turned to Elena, his voice rough but soft. You lit the fire in their hearts. She smiled faintly through her tears. No, Jack. You did. Outside, the sky over Dust Creek was still gray, but light had returned to the faces inside, the light of faith, of love, and of a kind of honor that no storm could ever wash away. That night, as the fire flickered in the rebuilt church, Dust Creek found more than hope. It found the courage to stand together again. And in the shared gaze between Jack and Elena, there was something beyond promise. The quiet certainty that after every trial by fire, true love never burns out. Part 6. The Hand and the Oil Lamp that night. Dust Creek finally fell silent after days of storm and turmoil. The wind no longer screamed. It sighed, gently brushing the rooftops and slipping through the cracks in the doors, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and damp hay. A silver moon spread its pale veil across the fields, soft as breath, and for the first time in weeks, the land seemed to be at peace. Inside the small wooden house, the oil lamp flickered softly on the table. Its golden light danced along the walls, casting trembling shadows that moved like memories. Jack sat quietly in his chair, his sleeves rolled up. A tear in his arm bled faintly, the skin around it raw and red. He stared at the flame, jaw tight, saying nothing. Elena approached with a bowl of warm water and a clean cloth. The faint scent of antiseptic filled the air, a smell she knew well from her days, working at a small infirmary back east. But here, mixed with wood and leather, it stirred something tender in her chest. "Let me see your arm," she said softly. Jack frowned slightly, but offered it without protest. His skin was tanned and rough, hard as the land itself. Elena bent close, cleaning the wound with slow, careful motions. He winced once, exhaling through his teeth. "You handle pain well," she murmured, the corner of her lips curving faintly. He chuckled, a low, gravelly sound. Out here, if you can't bear pain, you don't last long enough to see another sunrise." She didn't answer, only wrapped his arm in clean white cloth. The lamplight shone across their hands, hers, small, careful, trembling with focus. His large and scarred, made for reins and rifles. Two worlds touching, meeting quietly in the space between. After a pause, Elena traced a long scar running from his elbow to his wrist. And this one, Jack's eyes flickered distant. From a border fight, 3 years ago. "I tried to save someone, but didn't make it in time." His voice caught rough, almost breaking. Elena looked up, her gaze meeting his. "Does it still hurt?" she asked softly. He was silent for a moment. Then he looked at her, really looked, and said in a voice barely above a whisper, "Only when you touch it." The world seemed to stop. The flame wavered. Shadows trembled on the walls. Elena froze, her hand still resting on his arm. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Jack didn't move, didn't look away. Their eyes locked, so close, so fragile, one breath apart. Silence thickened around them, warm and trembling. Outside, the wind sighed through the cracks. Crickets sang somewhere far away. Elena's lips parted slightly. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of being seen, truly, completely seen. Jack leaned closer, slow, as if afraid the moment might shatter. His eyes had softened, no longer the cold gray of survival, but the gold of firelight. In their reflection, Elena saw something she'd never seen before, a man finding his way back to life. "And then, Papa, I'm scared of the thunder." Lucy's small voice pierced the stillness from the next room. Both froze. Elena blinked, pulling back. Jack exhaled and smiled faintly, a rueful, helpless smile. He stood rubbing the back of his neck. "I should check on her." But just as he reached the doorway, he stopped, turned. She was still there, seated in the lamplight, her face soft and glowing, eyes wide with something unspoken. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then, in a voice barely above the whisper of wind through grass, he said, "Stay. Won't you?" Elena's lips parted. Their eyes met again, no hesitation this time, only quiet understanding. She nodded. "I'll stay." Jack bowed his head slightly, then slipped into Lucy's room. The door closed gently behind him. Elena remained by the table, watching the small flames sway inside the glass. The light no longer trembled because of the wind, but because of something alive inside her. She reached up, touching the spot on her own cheek where his warmth had lingered. A faint smile formed, fragile but real. She whispered to herself, almost like an echo of his words, "Only when you touch it." Outside, the moon rose above the distant hills, casting its pale light across the Carter Ranch. The fields glimmered silver under the quiet sky. Somewhere in the night, the oil lamp still burned small but steady, like two hearts that had once been lost, now finding their way to one another. The night was silent, peaceful, but inside that little wooden house, a different kind of flame was burning bright. Part 7. The Trial of the Heart. That morning, the sky over Dust Creek hung like lead. Dark clouds pressed low, the wind hissed through the broken fences, and the old flag atop the church flapped in ragged bursts. The church bell rang 3 times, the call for an emergency meeting. People poured in until the pews overflowed. The air was thick with sweat leather and tobacco, and heavier still with tension. In the front row sat Mrs. Hargrove, her back straight, a sealed envelope marked with red wax in her hand, the truth she was about to reveal. Elena sat in the back, her hands cold and still. Beside her, Lucy clutched her skirt, small but fierce-eyed. Across the room, Jack Carter stood with his arms crossed, face carved from stone. When the murmurs died, Mrs. Hargrove rose. Her voice was sharp, confident, the tone of someone who believed she spoke for God and justice alike. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her gaze sweeping across the hall. "I am not here for vengeance, but for the honor of Dust Creek. We were once a moral town, until this woman, Elena Moore, arrived with a forged letter and stole not only Mr. Carter's land, but his heart A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded. Others looked away, afraid to meet anyone's eyes. Elena tightened her grip on Lucy's hand. Her knees trembled, but she did not move. Mrs. Hargrove broke the wax seal and pulled out a yellowed letter, holding it high. This, she declared, is the proof, the fake proposal she used to deceive him. I have testimony from a lawyer. The man she claimed to correspond with, Samuel Carter, never existed in Santa Fe. Her voice cracked like a whip. Elena went pale, her lips trembling. Jack stepped forward, voice low but firm. Let me see that. Mrs. Hargrove smiled, victory gleaming in her eyes, and handed it to him. Jack examined the paper carefully, then looked up. What is it you want, Hargrove? She tilted her chin, every word precise and poisonous. I want a choice, Mr. Carter. If you care for your reputation and your property, you'll stand before this town and admit that your affair with her was a mistake. If you refuse, I'll send this to the county court. You'll lose the ranch and everything else. A long silence fell. You could hear the wind sliding through the cracks in the walls. Elena lowered her head. She understood what this meant, that he could lose it all for her. She wanted to speak, to beg him not to, but her voice caught in her throat. Mrs. Hargrove's tone turned honey-sweet cruel beneath the veneer. Just one word, Mr. Carter. Renounce her, and all will be forgiven. Jack looked around at the faces he'd known all his life. Neighbors, friends, men who had built fences with him, drunk with him, mourned with him. Now they all watched, waiting for his verdict. And then a voice broke through the tension. If she's a sin, Lucy cried, standing on her small feet, then Dust Creek needs more sins like her. Every head turned. The little girl walked to the front, eyes shining, voice clear and strong. Miss Elena taught us to read. She taught us to dream. She made my papa laugh again. She brought songs and hope back to this town. If that's a sin, then please let God send us more of its silence. Not the kind filled with fear, but the kind that begins to break it. Elena's tears fell freely now. Jack looked at his daughter, then at the woman beside him. And in that moment, all the noise, all the doubt, all the choices became simple. He stepped forward. Mrs. Hargrove's straightened lips curling with confidence. Jack stopped in the center of the room, raised his head, and spoke in a voice that filled the church and beyond. I choose her, even if it costs me everything. His words echoed against the wooden walls, rolling out the open doorway into the gray sky beyond. I choose her because no piece of land is worth more than an honest heart. No honor is higher than true love. And if Dust Creek loses that, then it's no longer home. Something broke open in the room, not with anger, but awakening. A man clapped, then another, and another, until the hall thundered with applause. Rough hands calloused from work striking together in unity. Mrs. Hargrove stood frozen. The letter shook in her hand. Then, realizing she had lost the town she sought to command, she turned and left the click of her heels, hollow and defeated. Elena stayed where she was, tears streaking her dusted cheeks. Jack crossed to her, took her hand, and held it tight, no words needed. His grip said what his voice could not. You are what's left that matters. Lucy ran to them, wrapping her arms around both. And as they stood there together, a single beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, piercing the church window and spilling over them, a seal from heaven on the verdict of the heart. That day, Dust Creek witnessed more than a trial. It witnessed redemption. The day when love stood innocent and the heart, not the law, delivered its justice. Part 8. A Wedding in the Snow. That Christmas, Dust Creek wore its first white coat in years. Snow drifted softly from the sky, light fluttering, delicate, settling on rooftops and clinging to the pine branches outside the church. No one in town could remember the last snowfall. They said it was a sign, a blessing from God for souls that had endured the storm. From early morning, the sound of a weathered guitar echoed through the small church. It wasn't the polished tune of a musician, but the warm, clumsy melody of calloused hands, honest, humble, and full of heart, just like the people of the Western Plains. Inside, candlelight shimmered against the wooden walls, scattering into hundreds of flickering stars. The townsfolk gathered close together, cheeks flushed from the cold breath misting in the warm air. After months of hardship, division, and doubt, they had a reason to smile again, to witness something rare, love born from loss and courage turned into grace. The church doors opened. Elena stepped in. She wore a simple wedding gown of soft wool, its collar hand-embroidered, her hair pinned with a silver comb set with a pale blue stone, a gift from Lucy. The little girl had said, "It was my mother's. Now it should be yours." A hush fell over the room. The candlelight glowed against Elena's face, and for a moment she seemed to shine not with grandeur, but with the quiet beauty of a woman who had walked through pain, through doubt, and found herself loved truly and entirely. Lucy walked ahead of her, tossing dried wildflowers gathered from the fields. Each petal spun in the golden light like a whispered blessing. The child's laughter rang like silver bells, her cheeks pink with joy and cold. At the end of the aisle, Jack Carter waited. He wore a crisp white shirt beneath a dark overcoat, his father's old silver badge pinned at the collar. When Elena came into view, something softened in his eyes, that deep, steady gray, now warm and endless as the sky before a storm. When she reached him, Jack took her hand, his rough, work-worn fingers closing around hers, delicate and sure. Two worlds, once divided, now whole. Reverend Morrison, Dust Creek's old minister, smiled, voice raspy but kind. "Today, before God and this town, we gather not only to witness a wedding, but a miracle." Laughter rippled through the room, quiet and tender. The guitar played softly in the background. Jack spoke first. His voice was low, steady, and full. "Elena, you walked into my life like light through a storm. You brought laughter back to this house, reminded me that hope can grow again. I promise to protect you, to love you, and to keep this fire burning no matter how fierce the winds outside." Elena's lips trembled. Tears glistened on her cheeks as she unfolded a small, crumpled note. Her voice was soft, trembling, but every word carried her soul. "Jack, I was lost, wandering a desert of loneliness and fear. I once thought destiny was just a train gone the wrong way. But then I met you. You taught me that home isn't where we're born, it's where someone waits for us. I was lost, but because of you, I've found my way home." Her last words broke into quiet sobs. Lucy ran forward and wrapped her arms around her, and soon the whole church was wiping their eyes. Reverend Morrison cleared his throat, his smile trembling. "I've heard many vows in my life," he said, "but none that warmed my heart quite like these." He raised the old Bible voice, steady and solemn beneath the soft crackle of candles. "By the grace of God, I now pronounce you Jack and Elena Carter, husband and wife, joined in faith, in love, and in truth." The church bells rang. Outside, the snow began to fall heavier, bright and silver under the lantern light. Jack cupped Elena's face in his hand, whispering, "Thank you," for getting off the train at Dust Creek. And then he kissed her, a gentle, lingering kiss that melted into the cold air, into the chime of bells, into the soft strum of silent night. The congregation joined in song, old voices, young voices, once divided, now united in harmony. Lucy spun in circles beneath the snowfall, her laughter rising like the song itself. Elena held Jack's hand and looked around. Every face, every smile, every voice had become part of one single melody, as if the whole town had finally found its soul again. Outside, the snow kept falling light as grace, and in the heart of Dust Creek, the flame of love burned bright, washing away the scars of the past. That Christmas, they said, the snow didn't just fall on rooftops, it fell inside every heart. A promise that even in the driest desert, love can still bloom. Part 9. Spring and the Small Miracle. A year had passed since the snowfall, the miracle Dust Creek still spoke of in hushed, grateful tones. Now spring had truly come. The sky stretched wide and impossibly blue. On the once barren hillsides, tender green grass pushed through the soil. Wildflowers unfurled in golden waves that rippled to the horizon. The air smelled of earth and renewal, the scent of life returning to a land that had almost forgotten how to live. Elena's little school looked nothing like it once had. No longer a half-collapsed stable, it was now a sturdy white building with bright windows and wind chimes that sang softly in the sun. On the blackboard, written in looping chalk letters, were the words, "Dust Creek School, where we learn to dream." Every morning, children came running barefoot across the fields, books in hand, laughter spilling behind them like birdsong. Some came from miles away on mules or small horses, eager to learn their letters, eager to hear Miss Elena sing. Inside, Elena wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied back neatly. Her voice carried clear and warm through the room, the first letter of angel and also of unsung light. We learn letters to find our way, but more than that, we learn to find ourselves. The children giggled, their eyes shining. Lucy sat proudly in the front row, her braids swinging. She was now the assistant teacher, always quick to tell newcomers, "This is my mama." She turned a desert into a classroom. When the midday bell rang, the children scattered into the sunlight. Elena stayed behind, wiping the blackboard, humming softly to herself. Light streamed through the windows, painting her face in gold. The door creaked open. Jack Carter stepped in, carrying 2 mugs of warm milk. His hair was tousled from the wind, his jacket dusty, but his smile, steady and bright, could have lit the whole room. "Miss Dust Creek, ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "Allow me to serve lunch." Elena turned, eyes narrowing playfully. "Skipping work again. Are you my cowboy farmer?" Jack chuckled, setting the mugs on her desk. "Not a chance. I fixed the west fence this morning. Thought I'd come help the hardest worker in town?" Elena laughed softly, took the mug, and sipped. It was warm, creamy sweet, a taste that carried her back to their first quiet dinners in that creaking wooden house. Jack's gaze roamed the room. The walls were covered in drawings, fields, horses' sons, and on one desk sat a crayon picture of 3 people holding hands beneath a tree. Above them, in uneven letters, Lucy had written, "The Carter family." Jack's throat tightened. He spoke low, his voice rough with emotion. "You're not just teaching these kids to read, Elena. You're teaching me how to live." Elena looked up, smiling gently, the kind of smile that carried sunlight. "And you, Jack, you taught me that miracles do exist." The room seemed to glow. A soft breeze slipped through the window, ringing the wind chimes like laughter. The scent of wildflowers filled the air. Jack stepped closer, his calloused hand finding hers, fingers twining softly. They didn't need words, their silence said everything. Every storm, every wound, every lonely night had led them here to this still golden peace. Elena started to speak, then paused. Her hand drifted to her stomach. A faint, tender smile appeared on her lips. Jack frowned gently. "Elena, you all right?" She shook her head, eyes bright with something fragile and new. "I'm fine. It's just that we're going to have another little student soon, Jack." He froze. The words hit him like thunder in a clear sky. Then, slowly, his face broke into a stunned, radiant smile. He dropped to one knee, his rough palm resting against her belly, voice breaking into a whisper. "Dust Creek's second miracle." Elena laughed through her tears. "Not Dust Creek's, Jack. Ours." Outside, the children's laughter rang out. Lucy ran ahead, a basket of flowers swinging from her arm, singing Shenandoah in the spring wind. Her voice drifted across the hills, soft and full of joy. Jack rose, wrapping his arms around Elena from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You hear that?" he murmured. "Dust Creek's laughing." "Yes," she whispered back, smiling. "For the first time, it's really learned to sing." They stood together in silence, watching the fields stretch wide and green beneath the sun. Outside, spring shimmered in full bloom. Inside, love burned steady and quiet. And in that place, once barren, lost and forgotten, something small and miraculous was beginning to grow. Slowly, gently, like a springtime miracle in the heart of Dust Creek. Part 10. The Right Stop, the Right Home. Christmas Eve, 1 year later. Snow was falling again over Dust Creek. The church bells tolled through the quiet air, their sound carrying far across the white fields, each chime stirring memories of a Christmas past, of a wedding in the snow, and of a promise born that night. Inside the Carter farmhouse, firelight flickered warmly against the walls. The scent of toasted bread, hot milk, and burning wood wove together into something simple and sacred, the smell of home. Lucy sat before the fireplace, eyes fixed on the closed bedroom door. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside came the soft murmur of comforting words, the rhythm of breath, the trembling hush of waiting. The little girl clutched her ragdoll heart pounding in her chest. Then a cry, a small, bright cry like a silver bell ringing through the quiet of Christmas night. Lucy gasped, her voice breaking into a whisper. "The baby's here." Jack opened the door. His shirt was damp with sweat, his face glowing with exhaustion and awe. He knelt down, arms wide, pulling Lucy close. "Sweetheart, you have a baby brother." Lucy looked up, eyes shining. "Really, Papa? What's his name?" Jack smiled, voice trembling. "James. James Carter." Lucy's laughter bubbled out as she ran into the room. Elena lay against the pillows, pale but radiant, a soft smile on her lips. On her chest, a tiny baby slept, skin-pink hair, dark breath, steady. Lucy climbed up, touching the baby's hand gently. "Welcome to Dust Creek, James," she whispered. "You're going to be so loved here." Elena brushed Lucy's hair, her eyes bright with tears and peace. Jack stood beside the bed, looking down at his family, the woman who had once been a stranger, the daughter who had once been alone, and now the child who had made them whole. His throat tightened. He bowed his head, and silent tears slipped free. Elena took his hand. "Jack, are you crying?" He laughed softly, voice breaking. "Maybe. It's just, I thought I'd lost everything, and somehow I have it all." She smiled, eyes glowing with firelight. Outside the window, snowflakes melted against the glass, catching the light from the distant church. They shimmered like stars. "Do you remember," she whispered, "the day I got off at the wrong station?" Jack squeezed her hand, his fingers rough but gentle, his gaze softened, steady as the western plains. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You didn't get off at the wrong place, Elena. You just came exactly where God wanted us to meet." The church bells rang again, mingling with the faint strains of Silent Night rising from the town. The familiar guitar strummed through the winter air, the same melody that had played when their vows were spoken beneath falling snow. Lucy began to hum along, her small voice weaving through the song, "Sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace." Elena looked at baby James, smiling softly. His tiny breaths rose and fell in perfect rhythm. Jack's hand found hers again. Lucy leaned against her shoulder, her singing fading into sleep. For a moment, everything was still, no past, no storm, only the steady heartbeat of three souls, one love, one home. Elena whispered half to herself, "I used to think my life was just a series of wrong trains, but maybe every mistake was leading me here." Jack's smile deepened, his voice low as the crackle of the fire. "Dust Creek isn't the last stop, Elena. It's home." She laughed softly through her tears. Outside, the snow fell like silk, glowing beneath the lantern light. The church bells tolled once more, carrying across the fields, a blessing for all the wandering souls who still dared to believe in love. And as that Christmas night drew to a close, Dust Creek, the lonely town of dust and silence, finally had what it had always needed, the light of people who had learned how to love, how to hope, and how to find their way home. Later that night, the Carters sat together by the fire. Lucy folded paper cranes from old newspapers, showing them to baby James, who giggled and reached for them with tiny hands. Elena brushed Lucy's hair, smiling. Jack sat in his worn leather chair, holding a weathered brown envelope, the edges frayed with age. On it was written in faded ink, "To Sam Turner, conductor, train, number 317 Santa Fe line." Elena glanced up. "You never sent it." Jack smiled faintly. "No, but tonight feels like the right time." He unfolded the letter and read aloud, his deep voice filling the warm room. "Dear Sam, it's been a year since you stopped train 317 at Dust Creek. I don't know why you did it. Maybe a fault in the engine or maybe just a feeling. But because of that single moment, a woman stepped off the train, and she brought a miracle with her. From a station of dust and loneliness, we found home. From a stop that seemed wrong, we found destiny. Thank you, Sam, for stopping at just the right time. Jack Carter. When he folded the letter again, only the soft crackle of fire and the rhythmic breathing of baby James filled the room. Elena looked at him, smiling through quiet tears. Do you think Sam ever realized he changed our lives? Jack shook his head gently. Maybe not. But sometimes you don't need to know you've made a miracle. It's enough that it exists. Lucy looked up, eyes wide. Papa, can we send the letter tomorrow? I'll use the snowflake stamp. Jack chuckled, tousling her hair. Sure, sweetheart, but maybe the wind's already carried our thanks to him. Elena leaned against his shoulder, their silhouettes framed by firelight. After a while, Jack rose and opened the door. The cold swept in, tinged with snow and the sound of distant bells. He lifted James in his arms, Elena held Lucy, and together they stepped out onto the porch. The night sky stretched wide, scattered with stars. Snow fell gently, each flake melting into warmth as it touched their coats. Look, Papa. Lucy laughed, reaching for the sky. The snow looks like angels flying. Jack wrapped an arm around Elena, drawing all three close. Maybe they're angels, he said softly. Angels who found their way home. They stood there, four shadows cast against the snow, the glow of their home flickering behind them, a painting of peace. Elena looked toward the end of the road where an old wooden sign read, Dust Creek Station. The faint lamplight above it flickered as if smiling back at them. She whispered, if I hadn't gotten off that train, I would never have known what home feels like. Jack kissed her forehead. You didn't get off at the wrong stop, Elena. You just arrived at the place God meant for us to meet. She smiled through her tears. Lucy hugged her tightly. Jack's arm held them all as snow drifted softly over their hair and shoulders, glowing silver in the moonlight. The town was silent. Only the wind and the distant church bells sang the lullaby of fate. And then a warm voice, the final echo of Dust Creek's story, rose over the snow. Sometimes the wrong train takes you to the right place. Not so you can find someone, but so that someone can find you.